Well, what is your favourite Star Wars?
My favourite Star Wars is the one with the Ewoks in.
Oh, is that Return of the Jedi?
Yes.
And why do you like them so much?
Because sometimes they say, Woodini!
Oh, I think you got confused. That's a Jawa that says Utini.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's okay. But you like them too, do you? You like the Jawas and the Ewoks?
Yeah.
And what other little small... You like the Porgs too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also I like R2-D2 and BB-8.
Oh, it's almost as if George Lucas would be justified to put in all the small, cute, cuddly things so that children like his films. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hi, welcome to the pod this week. My name is Baz.
And I'm Rich.
And May the 8th be with you is what I believe the kids say.
That's the phrase.
Yeah, no, we're a little bit late, but I think that the precursor to the pod there was my son Oscar talking about Star Wars, and we're going to have a Star Wars-centric pod this week. It feels only right, because every other fucker everywhere does it, and gets lots of pop out of it. So we want pop, Rich is so nonplussed about that.
Oh yeah. I mean, that seems like a good segue to beers.
Yeah, it does.
We don't want pop.
We want alcoholic pop. So I'm going to call this section "Faith Some More."
Right.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Right.
Thoroughly unimpressed.
Oh, this is a bad start to the pod. Rich hates me. So I happened to pick up a 12-pack of Faith from my work that was a couple of days out of date, and lo and behold, no one else wanted it. So, and
Shocker.
this, yeah, I know. Well, I know. It's when it says it's out of date, it's best before.
Yeah,
which
it's fine.
how best before does an IPA feel? So
I mean, it's fine.
we're kind of reviewing one of the beers that I drank the most during the winter, because for some reason the England team were sponsored by Northern Monk in my shop. It seemed to be, almost. It was a bit of a strange sort of through my chain of I don't know what to call them, my chain of food branch, etc. People that I work for.
Place what you work.
Thank you. Place what you work, and and they had an England style Faith, which is from Northern Monk, and I drank a lot of it because after England went out the World Cup, it got slashed with reductions, and there was so much of it still, and it was great because it tasted fantastic.
I was going to say, it's a nice drink.
It was like half the price of what you'd have to get it at any other time, even at the brewery. So Northern Monk, quite easy to get hold of now, I'd say, in supermarkets. I've seen them in most supermarkets, and even when I went back to Carl to visit my friends last year, there was quite a lot in Tesco, for example, up there, and that, to get it as far reaching as 120 miles away was great. I'm sure it's the same anywhere else in the country, like most chains now, big food chains, probably have a similar sort of range. So it's great to see a Leeds brewery doing so well, getting lots of places.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's perfectly quaffable. It's a nice drink.
Yeah.
So, well done.
Yeah,
well done,
I drink a lot of this, so it's my drink of choice. So Faith Some More, thank you.
So while we're doing random ramblings and stuff like that, people said some nice things about
They
the
did.
last episode.
You sound shocked.
I sort of am.
I think the best feedback I heard was mostly about hearing about your childhood. Maybe we need to take a different.
I mean, that's a slightly terrifying route to go down.
Different direction with the pod.
Me
Therapy.
Yeah, Richard tells us stories.
But yeah, some of the feedback from my wife, for example, was that you have a very soothing voice.
Oh, thanks. I'll take that.
There you go.
Yeah,
I mean,
not bad. There's a couple of friends of ours said that their baby was listening to it and hopefully not picking up too much swearing.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry about that, Ernie.
Yep. Sorry, Eddie. But hey ho,
And we've mentioned Paddy on the pod before as well, and he said he was listening with his little baby boy Kit too, and he said it was one of the best episodes and loved, I guess, almost like the realism, really, in terms of being able to talk about ourselves as people and what it meant to us and stuff.
Fallible human beings.
That's where we're going with that. Yeah, exactly.
I'll take
So, yeah, it was lovely. So thank you very much, guys. So, if you enjoy the pod, please pass it on to people you might think might be interested. I know it's about gaming and retro gaming, and specifically we try to do it through the sort of view of PSP and PS Vita, but hopefully there's something in there for everyone, and last week's pod showed that. So thanks very much.
Ultimately, if you don't like it, give it to someone that you hate.
Yeah, that's
like inflict it on someone else.
Shit, I never thought about that. That'd be brilliant. Like a shit grenade.
Yeah, exactly.
Like put it into their lives, insert it into their ears, and they'll be fucking livid. And I would love that.
Yeah, and the last episode was what, hour and 20 minutes or something. So if you really don't like them, play it at half speed, and you can get like 3 hours worth of fun out of it.
Some sort of weird torture.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, great, wonderful. There we go. Works for everybody. So,
speaking of weird torture, shall we do Star Wars?
I've got a problem at the moment, Rich.
What's that?
There's too much Star Wars in my house. There's too much Star Wars in my house. There's the Imperial March and the main theme constantly on my Google Home, just all the time.
That genuinely sounds like torture.
It really is. It's almost like, I love that my children are so into something together as well. I mean, completely different developmental stages, but they're so into it, and it's crazy. And they're running around the front room with lightsabers and things, and a stormtrooper that says phrases, including the Heimlich. And the Heimlich.
The Heimlich?
You do Heimlich on him. Now, whatever it's called, the scream that is like the Hollywood scream.
The proper like... Ah!
Thank you very much. Yeah, perfect, yeah. And, they're running around with him and dropping him off the couch. And then Oscar got Boba Fett's Starfighter today, which is not called Slave One anymore in the shops.
Is it not?
No.
That's interesting.
Quite understandably, to the British Empire of 200 years ago.
What is it called?
It's called Boba Fett's Starfighter.
Oh, that's a bit of a cop-out.
It's shit.
Could have at least given it a name. Yeah. Oh, well.
I know. So, that's that's flying around my front room, and and Oz insists on calling the Millennium Falcon the Manellium Falcon on purpose, and that really, really upsets me to the point of despair. So there is some weird type of torture going on in my house at the moment that's very Star Wars oriented. So on the back of that, on the way here, walking over, and Rich didn't know I was going to do this, I'm going to flip a little thing on you. Like everyone talks about, we're going to do a bit of a Star Wars game ranking, and we haven't played every game. We don't know everything about every game. We're not the best reviewers of every single game, but we're going to do it. But I want to start us off with just a little bit of a movie chat and just the 9 main films.
Right.
We're not going to do which is the best film ranked, because everybody does that. I thought, and this has probably been done somewhere on the internet, but I've just thought about it on the way here. Odds versus evens. Who would win in terms of ranking for you? So let's just think about that out loud then. So we've got episode 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. So you're weighted more in terms of you've got more films on the odds, but then you've also got on the other side, then you've got 2, 4, 6. This is classic podcasting, and 8. number 1. Now, which would you say is a better set of films?
Odds.
Is that because there's more of them?
No. If I've got my maths right, Empire Strikes Back is episode 5?
Yes.
Yeah. Last
Nailed
Jedi
it.
is an even?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Even.
I love that you went to those 2 films to say what's my favourite and what's my
that's
worst.
the thing. Basically, no, they're both
favourites.
They're both
Oh,
like
yeah,
that. I am
okay, yeah.
unapologetically pro Last Jedi. Always have been, always will be, and I will happily fight anybody that says otherwise.
Yeah,
So,
we've heard about this.
we've heard about this.
Yeah, all right, whatever. Come on.
So, you know what? Yeah, just on that alone, I'm going to go evens.
Holy shit.
I'm going to go evens. Yeah.
Attack of the Clones is in there.
Yeah, and I liked Attack of the Clones when I was a kid. Right?
It's so boring.
Yeah. Yeah. But, and this was something I was going to come on to, but it had some of the best stuff around the film.
Okay.
So for the era and the games and stuff like that were coming out attached to that film, there's some really interesting, good stuff.
Okay.
So for me, you bundle it up as a sort of package.
I'm staring at Rich
you
extremely
are
hard
staring.
right now. Not angrily. I'm intrigued to see what he means. You mean by that.
So, that obviously that prequel trilogy was kind of not quite a jumping on point, because the reason I asked about The Empire Strikes Back was that the first time I saw a Star Wars film at the cinema, I went with my mum and my sister. I don't think Dad was there. I think he was at work or something. But it was the re-release of Empire Strikes Back. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure most people that give a monkeys about the series highlight that as one of, if not the high watermark. So once you've seen that in the cinema, you're kind of on a bit of a hiding to nothing, really, aren't you?
Yeah.
So after that, it was just a kind of, okay, well, it's fun. I don't really have to think about it. But yeah, I always have a soft spot for Attack of the Clones. And I think that's in no small part down to Samuel L. Jackson. Even at that tender young age, I could appreciate the awesomeness. But yeah, it is objectively not a great film. I'm perfectly happy with that. But I've always had a soft spot for it. It's definitely a guilty pleasure sort of Star Wars film for me.
Wow.
But yeah, one of my favourites is The Last Jedi, because it tried to do something different. I am sick to the back teeth of the fucking Skywalkers. I am. I really am. I could not give less of a shit about the Skywalkers by this point. Fuck off, the lot of you, right? I'm done. Right?
So much that you were really happy to see Leia blasted into space.
Yes. Yeah, you know what? Yeah. And you know what?
She may as well have been sat in a fucking portal when that happened, but it was hilarious.
I do not agree with the way that segment was put together, cinematically, right? But the sentiment behind her having some, powers and being able to tap into it, yeah, totally on board with it. And we're going to come on to with some of the games and stuff like that, a lot of the themes that I always appreciated in my games were ones that they finally got around to starting to look at in The Last Jedi. Don't get me wrong, they didn't sort of follow that train of thought through as much as I would have liked. And I am forever and a day utterly fucked off with J.J. Abrams and what he was doing with the whole thing, and the entire Disneyfication of the franchise and this art.
Can I stop the rant there for a second?
Before it gets going?
No, not
Oh,
that
I'm just getting started, man.
Yeah, it was just that I think that it's really funny because there are two pools of people that. So, for example, and I'm not trying to piss you off here, but but watching with my children recently, we watched 789, and I've kind of mellowed on 789 completely as a whole trilogy, but I've always really quite enjoyed 7, which just feels like a complete retread of 4, which feels wonderful to me that I've just got another version of 4. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with having extra sauce on your ice cream?
Because you've already had the ice cream, Faz.
And then you put the sauce on it, which is... no, that's probably a bad analogy. So what is wrong with having 2 scoops of ice cream and one slightly different? So you get a vanilla and a Madagascar vanilla, maybe? Right. I don't know. What's wrong with that?
The reason that I take issue... the reason I take issue with that is that for pre-Disney and this whole weird decree of we're going to get rid of all of the extra extended universe canon of this thing, it's a big universe. There's lots of stuff happening in it, and what was cool was how a lot of different people were exploring a lot of different corners of it in a lot of different ways. And,
freaky different ways.
Well, quite possibly. But Disney came along and were like, no, line in the sand, here's how it's going to be. And I think when you start down that route of taking it away from the fans and what they brought to it, you're going to create problems for yourself. And part of what irks me about that most recent trilogy is the fact that so much of it is just relying on teary-eyed nostalgia and retreads. It could be doing so much more interesting things with the source material, and it just didn't. apart from The Last Jedi, which started to flirt with some of those ideas.
So that's the source material that is developed around it, not through the films. So it's interesting because we are going to be a massive loggerheads here.
Absolutely.
Because I am just a film purist, because I do not give a shit about the things around the films, or even possibly in some of the games around it either. I'm not that bothered particularly. I'm just like, I feel like that's my Star Wars, that's my saga. And it's just like
that's fair enough, but like
it's not,
okay.
is it? Because
No. So let me fire that one back at you then. So if 7, I've already lost. We should have put them on the wall or something, like a list of what one was what number.
fucking darts playing at them already.
Yeah, it was 7, wasn't it? So 79, yeah. So episode 7, like if it's that much of a retread and you're happy with that, why not just watch episode 4 again?
I watch it all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So why do you need another film that's doing the same thing?
Because I don't mind that there's a little bit of tweaks in different characters and stuff like that. As in, so you don't.
It's so little, Faz.
Yeah, exactly. But it's enough, though, isn't it?
No.
Like, so I mean,
No,
like
it's not.
for example, you don't get to see the Falcon fighting as much as it fights at the start of episode 7. Like, as in, when they are on Jakku and the Falcon's fighting the TIE fighters and going through the old Death Stars? No, the old Star Destroyers at that point. Like, it really is like, here we are just going to fly through the skeletons of the previous films. Like, you don't get to see the Falcon, do that very often. You kind of see it at the start. You kind of see it in 4 a little bit, but it's not like, why is it wrong for me to get really excited to see Rey pull that move, and then like Finn like jam the gun up and stuff, like,
Because it totally lacks impact.
But it doesn't. I got really excited about it, and that was like just 3 weeks ago when I watched it like the 5th time. Like, is it like, no, it sounds stupid. Like,
No, it doesn't. No.
The trailer, like when the Falcon bursts out and like you hear like Andy Serkis when he's voicing Snoke. And he's like, oh, it says the dark side and the light. And then the Falcon just bursts onto the screen. Holy fuck, that was exciting. Because it's just back. It's just back. In POG form. Like, it's just, like... And I get it. I understand completely how inane and childish that makes me. I get it. But I'm not going to say that out loud. I'm going to turn that back. Isn't Star Wars a bit like that? Like, isn't it? Like, when I sat there beside my children, especially like the weird impact it has on my 18-month-old, who doesn't sit still for fucking anything at all. Like, it just won't sit still ever. Just sit still. But he will for this. He will for he did. For, I mean, don't get me wrong. He kind of waned during 9, which I see as a review. If I'm going to be honest, yeah. But like for 7 and 8, he literally would like sit there, and it was his thing. His thing was to come and crawl and sit on me, his dad, to watch that. He would never go. He never does that for anything else. Not like Hey Dougie or anything like that, or any I guess current children's shows. To see that impact on him, and I was like, gosh, and that I guess that would emanate to me and make me feel like, wow,
Absolutely.
this is magical for even an 18-month-old. Like, it's weirdly.
I'm really, really glad you've made that point, because I think this is what gets to the heart of the whole Star Wars thing for a lot of people, because I think anybody who comes across it of a certain age and a certain inclination, disposition, what have you, like anybody that it sinks its claws into, like it'll stay with them, right? Because they are at heart, family films, kids films, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's why I've got a soft spot for, say, Attack of the Clones and stuff like that, because I was, a ripe age for it. And, when I first saw Empire Strikes Back, I think, if anything, I might have been a touch too young to understand what was going on. And I certainly didn't understand the sort of plot ramifications or anything like that. But, the Hoth bit and all that, you're like, oh, yeah, shit, this is awesome. I mean, probably without the swearing, because I was whatever, but still.
It's interesting you should say that, because, I mean, not to cut you off, you can carry on after this point, but I just thought I remember specifically, like, and I always kind of, like, I don't joke with my parents about this, I think they get quite upset about it, but certainly something, I don't tend to, for some reason, hold many childhood memories of that age. Like, I seem to remember quite a few things when I was really quite young, and then teenage years, that is in a struggle for sort of, say, between, I don't know, like, I guess what would have been 10 or 9, that is in, so between, like, say, 5 and 15, I really struggle for memories. I don't know why that is. But I do remember standing outside the cinema waiting to go see the Star Wars trilogy being re-released, all 3 of the films. I remember being so excited. And like you say, that there is something about, the impact that has on you as a person. But it's very interesting that, so when you said about Attack of the Clones, I almost felt a bit old for those films. Like, isn't he, like even like a bit like, like almost long in the tooth, Star Wars wise, when we came to, probably not, Phantom Menace, I remember seeing and being excited for that. But remember coming around to Attack of the Clones, which was 2 years later, was it? Something 3 years
like
later?
that, yeah.
And I remember being like, I think I'd seen The Matrix by that point. I think that was kind of like around that time was almost, and I was like, what's this?
What's this sci-fi?
I was like, what is this? Like,
it's a fair point because, like, I genuinely, I remember going to see Empire Strikes Back. I don't remember seeing any of the other ones in the cinema or anything like that up until like episode 7. I think I saw Rogue One at the cinema, but like,
best one.
oh yeah, like that's not up for debate.
It doesn't need to be. It's so good.
Just because it's legitimately great. But in fact, that speaks to what I was saying about trying something a little bit different with the films. Like, they have the capacity to do it, and that is what is so relentlessly frustrating when they don't.
I guess that is a wider universe sort of feel. But then surely the middle ground that we're meeting at is that it's just a really good film. That is, it's just a very good story set in a Star Wars universe.
Told well.
Set in the canon of that. Even if, do you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like, and it's like, it's not going to end well. Like, it's fine well pretty much at the start. So, but they don't bottle it on that either. They tell it like
they
a
stick
proper,
the landing.
Yeah, it's a proper human story. And then you even get those bits of, here's Vader down the corridor. You're like, fuck yes. That is in. I don't know any Star Wars fan that has not went squee at that point. I just don't know any. Everybody thinks that's one of the greatest moments of the Star Wars films. And bring up the Hammerhead Corvette. That's not, what's not good about that?
So this is the thing, right? Like, and I think what definitely winds me up about it as a franchise is like, I have nostalgia for it, right? I loved it when I was a kid, but I definitely nowadays I feel like I'm kind of over it, right? But as we're demonstrating, as soon as you start thinking about it, as soon as you start talking about it, like that spark is still there on some level. And I think that is why I get aggy when it's like, oh god, why is Disney releasing another thing this week about this? Like, who gives a shit about whatever? Or like, I saw a when you phone like suggest a news headline or something like that, I think it was on Empire or something like that, funnily enough. I think like
Imperial forces had landed.
it was not quite as glamorous as that. It was something about Disney executives looking at like eventification, he says, doing air quotes again, of
The
Bond
Disney
films and like what Star Wars could learn from Bond. It's like, well, that's because Bond isn't putting stuff out like every month or something like that.
Thankfully.
Yeah, exactly. People can breathe. People can like get excited for the next one. So it's all those sorts of things where like I do wonder if going forward a bit of that kind of magic is going to get lost for a lot of people, and it's going to be sort of less of a sort of generational thing. I guess.
I don't know. Like the way that Oz speaks about it is like, when do I get my next spoonful of Star Wars?
Yeah, because I don't have kids, so you're seeing it from the other end of the
When do
scale.
I get to watch Mandalorian? And I'm like, well, in a bit. And it's like, well, what? And he's like, and he just can't wait. So we've just now, we're in a tough situation here now, Rich. We've just finished episode 1. So, I don't know if you know how this works, but episode 2 is next. And I do not want to watch it. So I will have to just play it for him at some point, I think, and he can kind of make his own way through that. To be fair, he finished off episode 1 by himself. I was really quite annoyed because actually I saw pod racing and then he was watching it by himself when I was out of the house. Like, so Sal sort of set him off with that. So I missed the end. I missed the mall fight. So I haven't seen his reaction to that yet. But so I didn't want to necessarily do that, but I've done it. I knew this would happen, get into it in depth, but here we are. You could probably obviously understand which side of the fence I'm falling down on, which would be the odds. But I get, I totally, 4, that is in, New Hope. Like, I say that is my favourite Star Wars film. So that might be why 7 gets such good pop from me as well. That
makes sense.
I just, that is quintessentially, it's the one I've watched the most. And yeah, sure, I've wavered to, Empire Strikes Back and stuff, but every time I just fall back on that magic of the very first Star Wars, and I'm a bit of a, I don't mind a little bit of a geeky Luke sort of situation and stuff, but you know, like Sally, like it was even a point where we were watching for, and then for some reason, I think just because the Rowan was throwing a tantrum, for example, we had to turn it off the television. It went onto Oscar's tablet, and I could hear it across the room, and whatever was going on or something like that, and I just basically like said line for line, like I wasn't even watching it, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh," and I didn't even realize I was doing it, and she's like, "It's incredible that you can not see what's going on." But from the noises that are happening in the background, you know what the next line will be in that film. And I'm like, yeah, that's sad, isn't it? But it is what it is. So yeah, certainly, you know, in terms of, I get it, 4 is great. 6, I know is a bit maligned and stuff. But, you know, like you heard from Oscar's, you know, start, I guess, you know, in terms of what his favourite film is, he likes the Ewoks, he likes the Jawas, he likes the Porgs, he likes the fun little cute stuff.
Yeah.
He thinks R2D2 is his best friend. Do you know what I mean? Like, and he made him out of Duplo the other day, and it was great. And it was, you know, so yeah, I kind of fall on the fence of 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Although 9 is just, I don't know what's happening with 9. But again, rewatching it the other day, I kind of give it a bit more of a pass than I did previously. So yeah, that was robust, and I feel like we definitely sorted something out there, which is our pure hatred for each other, which was bubbling up under every episode. So,
well, it's just nice that we have something we don't agree on.
Yeah,
that's
true. Yeah, no.
But like, I'll tell you what, like you saying just then about, you know, the kind of memories and kids picking it up and all that kind of stuff. And like, I think I've just had a bit of a breakthrough moment, right? Particularly with like episode 2 and stuff like that. And do you remember Newgrounds.com? Bear with me, this has a point. So, you know, you were saying that you weren't looking forward to watching episode 2. I think part of why I have a soft spot for it is because it was so maligned at the time. It was really, really fertile subject matter for people to spoof on things like Newgrounds.
Yeah.
And that was new at the time. And I think that was probably one of my first kind of like interactions with that website and seeing these ridiculous videos. And it was the kind of like, it broke down to the quote unquote director's cut of Phantom Menace, where it just cuts to credits after the ship blows up right at the start of the film. And the episode 2 version that was basically just 5 minutes of Anakin and Padme sat there in like a flash animation, just going, "Oh Annie, oh Padme, oh Annie, oh Padme," and then everyone blows up.
You're making me so angry at that film.
Yeah, but it's like that stuff I found really funny and engaging, and it was just this kind of realization that like the internet could be used for fun stuff like that, rather than like trying to find stuff from like, I don't know, Encarta or something like that. So yeah, like I've definitely got. I think most of my kind of cherished memories about Star Wars are not about the films. Yeah. I think it's all the kind of ancillary bullshit around it.
Which is great that we're so different, because I think that I just try and streamline everything in my life as much as possible. I don't, like, we talked about it, haven't we? We talked about finishing games and things. Side quests. I don't want side quests. I don't want to know about the Mandalorians and stuff. I want to know hard, solid, you know, like whatever you're telling me the through line is, I will. That's me. Let's go. Do you know what I mean? Like,
to the point.
I'll stick to that. I am just so basic as a human. It seems, but yeah. So we started off talking about the movies a little bit, which is a good conversation. I think we've probably lost Paddy at that point because he probably fucking hates The Last Jedi.
We've annoyed someone. I can guarantee that.
Yes, yay! I mean, that's what we'll kind of set out to do probably on episode 2.
Yeah,
jokes.
Nice.
No. So. Let's talk a little bit about some Star Wars games, though. So right. I think that it'd be good if we kind of talk about the games we played this week, and then we're going to go into a few websites, so we'll tell you where they're from. We're going to go into some Star Wars games rankings, and this will probably get into one of those kind of conversations again, really. And then we're going to use it as a scoring system where we're going to look at top 10 Star Wars games. We're going to give them points, and then they'll get scored out of 40. But it will get a little bit murky because we actually read another Guardian article on, was it Friday or Saturday, where it was like, so that kind of tainted our view a little bit, because it was like, oh, actually, remember to talk about this a little bit more. It's our fucking podcast, piss off. Yeah. So we'll add in a little bits and bats. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about games as well, that maybe might not be in the list that maybe we enjoy
Some honourable mentions.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, we'll get into that and we'll see how we get on. So, let's talk about the games we reviewed this week. So, I'd like you to start first because I've never played your game and I'm extremely interested.
So, I was playing Super Star Wars, which was a 2015 port of a 1992 SNES game.
Great. So I'm all about that.
So yeah, sort of side-scrolling action. Watched a couple of like little bits on YouTube about it and stuff like that once I'd finished playing it through because I had a bit of a hunch about it, which turned out to not quite be quite right. It turns out that
was Darth Vader Luke's father.
Spoilers.
So
it turns out that this is probably one of, if not the first, like big movie tie-in things that try to actually have the whole film in game form rather than just specific bits.
Okay.
So it's got all of the big moments from the film in there, like when Luke is ploughing through the sandcrawler, blasting Jawas left, right, and centre, killing everybody in the Mos Eisley Cantina.
I remember that bit.
Having his ass handed to him by a lava monster. Being attacked by one of the things from the little moving chessboard.
This is episode 7. You need a retread. This is
it takes some liberties with the source material. At one point, stormtroopers rain down from the sky in Mos Eisley. Like it is ridiculous in what it does, and kind of glorious.
Yeah.
For just like it almost feels like it's taking the piss, which. I'm all for.
I was going to say, I think
as you may have gathered.
Great.
It is fucking difficult. Like,
really?
I was playing it on easy, and I had to absolutely abuse the save system to get through it.
Wow.
I was saving mid-boss and all that kind of stuff. Like, I've got a bit of a life lead on it, right? Save and all that kind of stuff. And like, it is ridiculous. How anybody got through it back in the day, I do not know. Well, actually, I do know because there's a load of cheats that you can get a bunch of lives and continues and stuff, but you need a second controller for that, which I didn't have because it's on a PS Vita. So yeah, it is good fun. It's striking to look at still. It's got some really interesting bits, like for the Death Star and when you're on a speeder on Tatooine and stuff like that, where it's using a lot of what the SNES could do to sort of hit you with some snazzy visuals.
Yeah.
Lots of crying of "Daddy" when you blow things up as well, which I could think of someone who would probably enjoy that.
I mean, I enjoy it. Like, it's great.
But for like all of the kind of charm of it, like there are some bits where it's just like utterly ridiculous level design, like enemy placements. They're just spawning constantly sometimes, or you're having to make blind jumps, or worse, like the hit detection on some of the bosses is just so out of whack. Like, so, you are looking at the screen, you have avoided that attack, but as far as your health bar is concerned, you have had the absolute shit kicked out of you. So it's not kind. But, it's there's some fun to be had. There is some fun to be had. It's not necessarily one of those, like, ones for, like, if you're a fan of the source material, because, like, I can imagine in 92 or whatever, people would have been well up for it and would have overlooked quite a lot. It's a bit trickier nowadays. But, it's solid. You could easily give it a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
But it is frustrating.
How much time did you spend with it?
Probably a few hours, but, like, not all of that was happy.
I don't care about your happiness, Rich. I want to know how long you spent with it. And in terms of that, so is that obviously with save states in there? Excuse me. Did you complete it? Sorry, did you?
Yeah, I got through it, but I had to use. They only had the one save state, so I was constantly paranoid that I was going to accidentally save over, the load that I needed. But yeah, like I was having to lean on that hard. Like I would like to think that I'm reasonably good at picking up games, but this was just a couple of times where it was like, I could hear the Vita starting to creak under my grip. It was pushing it a couple of times.
16-bit or whatever it was. It's really struggling with it. And it's just interesting, just because I know it's a very common conversation, I think, obviously, in terms of, we've talked about previously as well, how hard games are, or when we're a good gamer. that retro games are notoriously difficult to try and extend games out, I guess, or how much playability you have. I was just interested to see what if obviously with the port, like, isn't if it's just the same thing bared out and with the save state, it seems to be the case.
Well, I mean, because they took the effort of putting the save states in, someone clearly looked at it and was like, actually, as a sort of modern convenience for a retro game, we should probably have this in. Similarly, they had the option to turn off the old sort of SNES slowdown and things like that. So, like, you know, there are some quality of life improvement things in there that are definitely appreciated. It doesn't feel quite as... I'll tell you what, right. To return to an old favourite, The Lion King, right? The Lion King, you can point at it and you can almost to the frame pinpoint the bit where it decides, no, it's going to be a difficult game now. This has to go back to the rental shop. You can't finish it in one sitting, right?
Where Timon goes at the start.
It starts. Fuck you, Timon. It always starts. It never finishes, Timon.
Has anyone ever seen the end of Lion King?
Speedrunners have. And I'll tell you what, it fucked me right off, right? Like, they breezed through it in about 10, 15 minutes. It was disgusting. I was livid. I mean, well done them, obviously, but fuck them. Anyway. That felt good. That felt good getting that off my chest. Yeah,
that's fine.
But in this game, there isn't that moment where you get, say, partway through level 2 or 3 and it suddenly spikes. The difficulty in this feels more like it's down to some technical oversights, or, you know, like the hitboxes and the hit detection and things like that, where it just feels like the technical ability did not necessarily match the ambition and the vision for what they were doing.
Right, okay.
And that is where the difficulty comes in. So it doesn't so much feel artificial, like, you know, you've got to return this to the rental store now. It feels artificial in that, yeah, sorry guys, we screwed this one up a little bit. So yeah, in that respect, it's I hate to say that a game feels unfair, but like this felt like it was leaning that way a couple of times.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like, and it wasn't necessarily because of bad design or anything like that. It's just that what seemed like a good idea at the time, perhaps in the cold light of day, however many years later, might not have been.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, you know, when there's a lava monster entering the fray and they're about to jack you up.
In fairness, the lava monster's a really good example, right? Because I was expecting that fight to be really hard. I managed to finish that fight by holding down the fire button with one hand while talking to my wife on the other side. I wasn't even looking at the Vita. In fact, at one point, I turned it around and showed her what I was doing. Like, I was just... You can cheese some of those boss fights, but then you go to the next one and it'll absolutely wipe the floor with you, because you're not jumping perfectly and things like that. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, where it's like, that feels like a technical oversight where, you know, perhaps they didn't anticipate you might approach it a certain way, or you didn't anticipate they would want you to approach it a certain way, rather than the whole game being hard. There's these weird inconsistencies.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I just imagine that I felt like when you said it was ported over, I thought maybe they would have got rid of the lumps almost. It's almost like like, I don't know, like the game I'm going to talk about is a port as well, and it's almost like, why would you leave the lumps in after 20 years to kind of, like, you know, think actually maybe you could do something a bit, you know, maybe make it a bit, you know, better and different and stuff. It's almost like I feel like they've maybe left something on the table there where actually could have got more people playing Star Wars on the Vita.
Yeah, I think if they did it again now and hadn't done it in 2015, you'd be getting into remaster territory.
Yeah,
where I think they would be much more inclined to do that. But I think in the years since 2015, they, in general, the people who play games and make games, you know, there's more of an appetite or willingness. I don't know. Like, remasters are kind of accepted as, oh, okay, well that's kind of a cool idea, or certainly there is a bit more willingness to give something like that a crack.
Yeah.
In general. Whereas perhaps back then I think they were possibly a bit worried about tampering with it too much. So like the extra bells and whistles they put on sit around the kind of core experience.
All right, cool. Fair enough. So speaking of the port then, sorry, so you said 6 out of 10, didn't you?
6 out of 10.
Yeah, cool. No wavering on that.
No, that's pretty solid.
Excellent. Yep. Right, okay. So, I am talking about a port from 2005, which is from a game from 2004, which is Battlefront 2.
Woo!
So there was a few, I think there was 3 Battlefront games got across to the PSP.
How many?
There was. Yeah, no, it's crazy. Oh. I've got another one sat there, which I'll probably, I guess, I'll have a little look at, but I don't have to sort of feeling this one out. I don't know if I will.
Yeah, that's fair.
Star Wars Battlefront 2. I remember playing the original Battlefront and Battlefront 2 on the PlayStation 2 at the time, and they're great, like, multiplayer games. Even single player, Battlefront 2 really steps on from Battlefront 1. You get a lot more bang for your buck, if you will, in terms of, like, there's a bit of a storyline. Mm-hmm. So I actually went back and played it the other day to compare it to the PSP port, just to give myself a little bit more sort of, I guess, a rounded sort of
context.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what have I actually, what's been ported across, and how good is it compared to the original game? Because I've not really had the chance to do that yet so far with the games I've been doing.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to sort of be able to say, well, actually, in the main game there is a really good through sort of story that you are a clone trooper and you're part of the 501st Brigade, and it's very it's really cool because it's in depth, and for a Star Wars game, that at the time didn't need to be. It could have been just, Star Wars Episode 2, Star Wars Episode 3. You kind of get those games, don't you, where you're playing through the movie.
Yeah.
This one was making its own storyline, and like you said, that actually, I'm contradicting myself here. It does, I guess, pad out the lore a little bit more. And actually, I was interested in finding a little bit more about that, and it was that you were in the Clone Wars. So
I guess it's a failing of the film that there was that much room to pad out.
There's a whole fucking series of the Clone Wars, where there's, between 2 and 3, you're like, how have we got from this point, like at the end of 2 and the start of 3? Like, I don't get where, and they do that. Like, I swear they must have done that, where it was like they were just, we're going to have a series. We're going to have that. We're planning to have a series.
It's a gap that needs bridging.
Yeah, because, all of a sudden, we're in space, trying to rescue Palpatine from General Grievous. Who the fuck's General Grievous out of nowhere? It's just anyway, really annoying to me, as you can tell. So, but the game, so on the console version, it's got a bit of heft to it and storyline and everything. In terms of it being ported over, that's lost. Kind of completely, really. It does have 3 different modes in single player, but when I say there's 3 modes, it's like there's only really one of them's like just play a game. Play the game. Have a go. And I'm like, that's not a mode. You can't dress that as a mode. Jesus, like, I must be so gullible when I was 17 or 18. Like, oh yeah, that's a mode. It's not a mode. But there is the main mode is Galactic Conquest, which is a bit like a game of Risk almost. So you get a star map, and you have and there's, I think there's 4 or 5 different campaigns you can play on that. And each of those campaigns, I'd say, probably lasts you a couple of hours, really, actually. So there is,
some meat on the bone.
Yeah, exactly. And the first campaign is that you, I think it's like Rise of the Rebellion. And I think, actually, funnily enough, the main campaign, the first campaign you can play on the console game is Rise of the Empire. So it's really interesting they kind of have that juxtaposition, actually, that the first offering on the PSP, nearly knocked my beer over, is Rise of the Rebellion. But you don't get any storyline to that at all. There's no, like, there's no VTs, nothing at all. Like, it's just like, it's just rest up that it's like, this is the Rise of the Rebellion.
Rebel.
Yeah, no, it's so weird. And then you get this star map, and you get all the familiar planets that you get in the films by that point, because you'll have had six films? Or was it only 5 by that point, maybe?
Yeah, it might have been 5.
Yeah, so that must have been released at the same year, I think, as Episode 3, 2005, or something there or thereabouts, was it? Anyway, and that's probably why the Clone Troopers thing was so, like, prevalent, I guess, in the console version. But yeah, and it'll be like, oh, you're going to go and fight on Tatooine now, and now this is held by the Empire, so you fight them on the planet, or you're traveling between planets, and there is a space battle. So there's 2 different, I guess, methods in which you can engage your enemy, whether you are Empire or whether you're Rebellion at the time. That's space battles, where my review of a space battle is, what the fuck is going on? In both console version and PSP version. In fact, the PSP version is probably clearer I'd say, than the console version. My word, is it repetitive. Like, this whole game is repetitive. Oh, right, okay, so here's a space battle. Great. What do we do here? First one. Right, okay, exciting. I'm gonna get my X-Wing, gonna get my Y-Wing, gonna get my A-Wing, gonna get my clone trooper transport. Like, I get the methods with which you can battle with, whether you are a trooper on the ground, in terms of the different people you can be, or the vehicles you can get into, or the starfighters you can get into, are excellent. Really great that you have so much detail that you can get into and different ways of fighting. It's brilliant, and I'd actually say the PSP seems to be a little bit more detailed than the actual main game, which is great. So it's almost like they've learned from that a little bit and thought, actually, we're going to put a little bit more into this. So it's great. Jump in my X-Wing. So jump in my X-Wing, and it'll tell you you click start, and it'll tell you, right, destroy these critical systems on this starfighter, on the Star Destroyer even. Okay, fair enough. Right. So how do you do that? Well, you fire missiles at it, and you fire your lasers at it. Right. Okay. Engine's gone. I'll just turn around. I'll just fire. Oh, I've got shot by a TIE fighter. Just start back at base. That's pretty annoying. It's quite far, but I'll do it. So, and then at the same time, you've got a number of people you're fighting with on your team. So you start off with 90, for example, on each team, and that goes down. So you do have some sort of time pressure that you could be losing some of your squadron while you're not doing your tasks. So fair enough, there's a little bit of pressure there. Not much, I'm going to be honest. I never lost a battle, ever. Over the 2 hours that I was playing this one campaign. Never even really got close to it, to be honest. I think maybe once I got down to 30 people. I was like, holy shit. I was like, oh my God. I was like, my battalion. And they had 70. And let me tell you, the ease with which you could dispatch 70 people and single-handedly pretty much was ridiculous. But you're there and you're taking down this Star Destroyer and you'll take out its critical systems and you'll be like, all right, I need to shoot the comms array now. Right, okay, so how do we do that? Missiles and lasers, just go straight towards it. Missiles and lasers, missiles and lasers. Okay, what do we need to do next? Take out the bridge. All right, is it something different? No. Missiles and lasers, missiles and lasers. Probably about, I'd say, 10 to 12 minutes game time, doing the exact same thing every single time. All right, fair enough. Space battle, that's done. Right, God, that's out of the way. Thanks. Anyway, so they get onto your planetary battles. Planetary battles, way more exciting. It's just capture the flag, basically, or domination. Yep. And you start off with 100 people each on each team. Holy shit, the AI is dumb as fuck. My word. I can't believe we used to play games like this and think that it was acceptable for the AI to be as so thick as they are. They're just stood in the corner waiting for you to attack them. They're facing the wrong way. They're stood beside you and doing nothing. You're just you turn your gun at them, and they might kind of scatter around a little bit. Don't get me wrong, you die, but mostly it's when you fight a tank because you think, well, I can take anything on at the moment because it seems to be, you end up most levels with 35, 36 kills, and then you look at the AI's kills. Inverted commas in the sky there, 4 or 5 kills each, maximum. That's the main assassin on their team. You're like, what's going on? Isn't it so pointless? What I am doing on this game is pointless. And then during this, so you look at the star map and you're taking over planetary systems. So that you start off with 1 that's a rebel system, for example, in this campaign, and 9 that are empire, and you start to take them over. But oh, lo and behold, you've bumped into another space battle. All right, what do we do in this one? The same thing. Right, planetary system, what do we do in this one? Same thing. Space battle, same thing. Over and over, the exact same thing. The AI is the exact same way. The only difference that there is the differences that you make. So there are bonuses that you can buy with the credits that you earn by taking over planets or winning space battles. So you can buy your heroes, which are your Jedis and your hero, or it might be Darth Vader if you're on the Empire, or it might be Boba Fett, or it might be that you get Yoda, or you might get Han Solo or Chewie. They're the things that probably make the vast difference in terms of how much you enjoy the game. They're quite difficult to use in the PSP because they move very quickly, and I think that the frame rate doesn't keep up with it as well as you should do. So when you're running around like Yoda, trying to take guys out, with the control system is... you get used to it, and I actually found it really comfortable in the end, was that so you move your camera. No, you move your person with your analog stick, but you move your camera with your face buttons. So triangle, circle, X, and square. Very interesting. Like, is it an actual? You know, you can tell how they've tried to port it over and thought, how do we actually make it so that you can still use the buttons, because there's less buttons on a PSP than a PS2.
Yeah, wasn't that the kind of way they did like Metal Gear Solid games or something like that as well?
Yeah,
it was.
was.
A couple that did similar.
And it's funny how comfortable that is. You know, when you say that out loud, you think that sounds so dumb. Actually, you get pretty used to it, but the difficulties do lie in so much that when you're playing with such a fast character, when you're playing with a Jedi or something, you're trying to speed run across a screen and attack 3 or 4 different people at the same time, that is difficult to turn your camera quick enough. But I found that like a minor sort of issue, really. But yeah, that is it was really weird, because you sort of like, you know, you didn't really need them because you were just a badass clone trooper anyway. Like, and I just like kept my finger on fire with my blaster, and every time it overheated, I was like, oh no, like, you know, like, I'll wait a second, oh wait, now I'll just kill another 10 people. Like, the battle for Kashyyyk, so weird that you have Wookiee home planet, by the way, people. Like, you have only 2 capture the flag points on each team. So you literally finish that planet in about 35 seconds. I'm not kidding. Like, you could just take that planet over so easy. It's ridiculous. But sometimes finishing a planetary battle off is difficult if you're trying to find that last troop that is on.
So it becomes like hide and seek.
Yeah, it literally is. So you can spend the time, like, you know, fine well, for example, there's 1 flag left, and you can go across the map to go to that flag, spend 35 seconds or whatever it is, turning that flag over to your flag, and then wait another 20 seconds for the battle to finish. Or you could try and find the trooper on the way. But they're not there. They're gone. They just don't exist. It takes so long. You're like, I've just decimated this entire army, and now I can't finish the battle because I can't find him. Because the AI is probably in a wall somewhere, hanging out, like, not knowing what the fuck he's doing. It's just insanity, really. So yeah, a very strange mix of things that I feel about this game, in so much that the core gameplay, when ported over, it was pretty okay. Yeah. But the actual game, with no story there in terms of it, all right, this is why we're driving it forward, was just so repetitive, and I was bored within minutes, if I'm going to be honest. And I can see why. I remember playing this as a multiplayer. And
I was going to say, like, was there an online component?
I remember that being the main driver of why you want to play the game. Really fun, you know, and that was almost like, I guess, a good sitting on the couch game, as it was anyway. I remember doing that, like, with all my friends, and yeah, it was, I guess, the main concept of Battlefront in general anyway. And a lot of gripes with the new Battlefront revival was that there wasn't enough about it, and it's almost like you can kind of see that in the PSP port of the original Battlefronts, that there's just not enough about it. And why would people pay the money to get that game when actually you probably just better get the home console version? So yeah, that was kind of an issue, really. But there was a little bit more to it. There was another mode called Challenges, where you basically had that was exclusive to PSP, and that was like a bit of a mini storyline. So you would maybe try and you know, go and collect things, or you'd be an assassin and go and kill people, like, as in for the rebels or whatever. That was them trying to attempt almost to cram what was on the home console game into the PSP. Yeah. And you found that with PSP games at that time. It was, and I've already guess had a bit of a gripe with this already on the pod, where it's like, I don't believe that they couldn't have ported over, like, something like the entirety of a Tiger Woods game, or the entirety of this game. Like, it doesn't seem like it would have been too big to hold on the UMD. It feels like they just thought that people didn't want that. It's like, oh, you've got a handheld version of this game, so you get a mini version of it, and it's like, you're taking us for fools? Well, it took me for a fool when I was 18, but now, ha-ha! The tables have turned. I now think that I know what I'm talking about a little bit on this podcast. So yeah, I'm annoyed that was the case as well with this game, where it's just that they've only brought over 50% of the game, when they could have brought it all over, and it probably been a lot better game for it, to be honest. So yeah, I guess I'd probably give it a 4 out of 10. You know, it's a below average game. The gameplay mechanics, fine. Star Wars, the detail you can get into in terms of who you can be and how you can fight your battles is great. If you said to me, you get to play one battle in this game and you get to do all these different things on it, and that's what you have to do, then, I'd review it really well. That is in, but knowing that you obviously have to grow into the game and there's lots of different parts of the game, like it's not well fleshed out, to be honest. So, yeah, that's how I felt about that game, really. Not great, but not horrendous either. Not Sims 2E. Which is how I will forever review all my games now against that game.
Yeah, that is the benchmark.
Yeah, the low water mark. Sinking the Bismarck. Bam! War. War reference there for all you guys out there.
So, shall we talk about more star-based wars? And games thereof.
That's what they are, aren't they?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing that you just describing that sounds like, if it was literary, it would be a scathing metaphor of the futility of wars of attrition. But,
yeah, pretty much, yeah.
But, you had to sit through it on a PSP.
Does it annoy you that a Star Destroyer is called a Star Destroyer?
What as opposed to...
Well, they can't destroy stars, can they?
Star Cuddler.
Oh, I'm so disappointed that they're not called that. Come here, you!
Go. You guys.
Yeah. But do you know what I mean? That is in,
No, it's
Okay.
never bothered me, really, because
Can you let it start bothering you, please?
I'm all right.
I need help.
I think, as we've established, I'm possibly not quite as invested in this Star Wars thing as you think.
Okay. So let's talk about the best ever Star Wars games.
Right.
This is going to be a fruity, like a HP fruity sauce. Have you ever had it?
No.
Oh, it's like a mix of tomato and brown. It's cool. I remember having it at my great uncles and great aunties and like some really random old peas. Like is in, but yeah, it's good sauce. Definitely worth it. Like is in, but it's never on offer. You've got to pay premium for that shit. And that's what this is. This part of the podcast is that sauce
shit.
Yeah.
Right.
So bit of pop there for HP sauce. So we took from some reputable sources some best 10 Star Wars games rankings to see, have we played them? Do we kind of agree with those? And just get a bit of a general feel for that. I'm hoping this will generate some conversation between you guys at home as well, in terms of what you feel and think about this as well. So what we did was we took those games and we give them a rank between 0 and 10. If you were the best game on that list, you got 10 points. If you're the worst game, you got 0 points. Some games will appear, and what we did was we took the top 5 really, and we did kind of mix it a little bit, and we'll tell you about that. We bent the rules a little bit when we took in another list, and also our own little opinions on that as well. But we'll give you the pure scores, and then we'll talk about what we think probably the top 5 order kind of really is. Mm-hmm. So IGN, that was somewhere we took it from, which we know. International Gaming Network. Remember when that website first came out?
Yeah.
And
now it's huge, and most people ignore what it says.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Good start. Games Radar as well.
Yeah.
What did that used to be?
So that was the website for a load of magazines, like Future Publishing magazines. So quite often when I was getting like N64 and GameCube magazines back in the day, it would be Future Publishing's website. I think it's spun off a bit onto its own now. Yeah,
I remember that it used to be called, like you say, it was for Future Publishing, but it used to be called something else. And I remember using that website quite a significant amount when I played Medal of Honor online, like on the PC when I was younger and stuff, and I used to look at that all the time for like reviews and things. But now Games Radar, GameRant.com as well, and Destructoid.com. So
Destructoid.
Yeah, some big names, and we did take into account a Guardian list that came a little bit later when we'd already done our maths, and I deleted it all off my phone. So that's why we've not really kind of done it as well as we could have done. So we're going to talk a little bit about the caveats then, and these kind of fall in towards the end of the list. I guess the top 3 are kind of set in stone, if I'm going to be honest. But, on those lists, the Lego Skywalker Saga, we talked about the top 5. So this is a 6, actually, entry. I wanted to put it in there because I felt it was right to talk about the Lego games and their Star Wars entries, because there's been numerous ones.
Quite a few.
And I'd say they are probably the most popular Lego games, I'd say.
Don't know. Don't know off the top of my head. I'd be surprised if they weren't, but I genuinely don't know what would be.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Lego have done so many franchises now, haven't they? Everyone probably that's going really. So, but Lego Skywalker Saga, played it. Actually, did a little bit of a sort of bit of a rerun, sort of the first few levels with Oscar at the weekend. It's on Game Pass for free, which is great. Yeah. And yeah, it's great. But this is where the caveat comes in. So also on these lists, we were finding that the Complete Saga, which is the original PlayStation 2 era Xbox.
Like the second one they did, wasn't it? Because they did the prequel trilogy first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is like the third one they did then, because they did the original trilogy and then they did the Complete Saga, which is all 6 of them together.
Oh right, yeah, I'm thinking the original trilogy. That was the second one. Yeah.
So they had all 6 of them together, and that was actually really quite well reviewed. And some people were saying that the Skywalker Saga is a bit chintzy, and also it's got a bit too much going on and too many collectibles, and there's a bit too many things going on the screen. Whereas actually the Complete Saga was a bit more of a pure, easier sort of way of getting through it. You know, you collecting all your sort of Lego bits. What do they call those? The little, not called coins or anything. The little Lego
studs.
Pieces. Studs. Thank you. Well done. So Lego studs. So that was, I guess, coming in at number 6. And then we had a little bit of a sort of a joining together of Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order. What's the precursor to that? What do you call that part of it? I mean, I've just written it down at shorthand here. That was probably a bit not cool of me. But that franchise / series so far, and the reason that Jedi Survivor was actually coming out as higher scoring across the 5 that we read, but we've not played either yet. Now, I have heard good reviews so far from people that have been playing it, very good reviews, and it sounds like it probably deserves its place in the top 5, but it's a bit early, I think, to be putting it in there. So did you play Fallen Order?
No, but for reasons I'll get on to later when I'm doing my kind of personal list, I think I would get on well with it, but I've never actually played it.
Okay, fair enough. So these first games, and this is why we're not really talking about them very much, is, you know, the Lego games, which I feel like everybody's probably played. I mean, I'm saying that, you know, like, they might not have done, but I'd be surprised if you weren't a Star Wars fan and not have played a Lego game, because it's, even for casual gamers, I would feel, you know, but also they're in-depth enough and fun enough for anybody that loves Star Wars to get into. So I don't feel like it needs too much detail talking around those. Do you feel it would
I don't think so. I think if as soon as you hear Lego and Star Wars in the same sentence, you probably have a relatively good idea of what's going on, because even if you haven't played the games, you've probably seen like the sets in the shops and things like that. So like, you know, I think it's probably pretty easy to get a pretty good grasp on what it involves.
Now, Bairdy, do you remember when you threw the Death Star at me and it hit me in the back? I know I pissed you off, and I'm sorry for that, but you know, that was a whole Death Star. That was a whole Death Star. It was a big piece. It was a big piece of Lego. That is, you know, that you really got me good with that. So yeah, that's when the Star Cuddler would have been preferred.
Star Cuddler would have been good. Yep.
So and then obviously, like we said, neither of us have played the Jedi Survivor Fallen Order series, but it seems like they're pretty well reviewed, and they're sitting up there at the moment in most game review lists, as we've seen. You know, with pretty high scores. But interesting, we'll probably talk about these games a little bit more. The top 3, because they seem to be very consistently in these lists, and I know that you've played 2 of them.
I played 3 of them.
You've played all of them.
Yep.
But I've only played 1 of them. Well, I played 1 and a bit, which I'll kind of get onto. So I want you to talk about these a little bit then. So coming in with 23 points out of 40 is Jedi Outcast 2.
Yeah, so this is a good example of what I was banging on about earlier, when I was like, the franchise is capable of more than it is doing. Like Kyle Katarn, the main character of Jedi Outcast 2 and the kind of couple of the games around it, is, in my opinion, the best Star Wars character of all time.
Wow.
And he's just not had a look in this brave new Disneyfied world of ours.
Can I just ask at this point then? So, I know you're probably going to tell us why that is, but that is in what kind of character?
Why is that?
what kind of character is he? Sorry, just because I mean, I've only seen clips of this game.
Sure.
And I kind of got him as a bit of a Han Solo Jedi. Is that correct? Or is that
kind of. He's not quite as sort of charming roguish as Han Solo. Okay. He's much more like morally grey, former mercenary.
Right, okay.
But dabbled with light and dark sides of the Force and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of the themes that started getting touched on in The Last Jedi, you can probably see where I'm going with this. But he ends up working alongside Luke to train other people and draws on that, look, I have fallen from grace multiple times, learn from my mistakes.
Yeah.
And he uses that as a good character motivation. And it's plausible, it makes sense, and it's a good story arc. Jedi Outcast 2 is probably the one that puts him and his sort of struggles front and centre. So you had the Dark Forces games beforehand, which were more of that era where you would unironically call something a Doom clone. You know, the kind of like early mid-90s kind of thing on PC.
Was it 96, wasn't it? Something like, it was like
something like that, possibly even slightly earlier. I can't remember off the top of my head, but Outcast 2 was when you are getting further into the sort of the noughties and everything's a bit more cinematic, but the lightsaber combat in that game is among the best in any of them. And I think, from what I've seen of Fallen Order and Survivor, they're the ones that arguably might surpass it.
Okay.
Possibly.
It looked a bit frantic when I watched the videos of it.
Yeah, it's a bit frantic.
There was a lot of people who had a lot of lightsabers actually in it.
Yeah, there are a lot of lightsabers in it, but it's a lot about rather than like say accurate, well-placed strikes, it's more about movement and positioning and timing.
Okay.
So like you feel as in control as you feel out of control, and there's a lot of jumping, but it works the force powers into the combat, so you're constantly relying on jumps and speed and stuff like that, and it's a tool to the arsenal. And I was of an age when that came out where it just grabbed me. And it's, spoiler alert, when we get onto our personal lists, it's easily in mine. So yeah, I have definitely have a soft spot for it. Battlefront 2, obviously as discussed, came out on various platforms. I played it on PSP as well back in the day. I've got the PSP port on my Vita, funnily enough, where you can remap those face button camera controls to the other analog stick.
Well, yeah, you bastard. We shouldn't have had me on this pod. We should have just had you.
Just ranting at a microphone for an hour. But I was mucking about a little bit more with the PC version, which has a lot more like online multiplayer and all that good stuff. Still holds up today. I dabbled with it earlier in the weekend. Movie, shooty. Like you say, ultimately kind of repetitive, but as soon as you add humans into the mix rather than AI, it elevates it like nobody's business. But yeah, ultimately not a particularly complicated game. You're here, they're there. Go kill each other, guys.
Yeah. So that 25 points that I had out of 40. So, yeah.
I think that place is warranted.
So that's the second best Star Wars game of all time, according to like 4 or 5 different websites.
Yeah, and I think that for 2 reasons. I think the level of detail, like you say, and the kind of the broad canvas it gives you for like living that kind of Star Wars fantasy of like, oh, I could go fly this, oh, I could go there, and all that kind of stuff. It taps into that, but it is just the gameplay itself still holds up, and like you said with like other Battlefront games, they're still making these games.
Yeah.
So like the idea is sound, and the kind of the window dressing around it is what changes. But as the kind of the first one to kind of maybe not perfect it, but get it pretty flipping close. I think it holds up.
Do you think it's one of the best couch co-op games ever?
I never really played it much couch co-op.
Okay.
So
I retract the question. I mean,
I could see how it would be, definitely. Yeah. But yeah, I've never really dabbled with it myself.
Okay. I mean, the only reason I asked that was because a lot of people were annoyed that the renewal, the DICE version in 2015 of the first one, which I really enjoyed, but it didn't have a lot of content, and you could tell it was just right for them adding DLC and you paying for it. But it didn't have couch co-op. It just had you kind of like single player, but it didn't have a campaign either. It was just like you
like
kind of battling
arenas.
arenas.
Scenario type things, weren't they?
They were great, but you definitely were missing that.
Yeah, it wasn't a full fat experience.
And I feel like that's what I found really good about Battlefront 2 was being able to go around to my friends and play that sort of year 11 sixth form. Sort of like for everyone else listening, sort of 15, 16, 17, 18 years old and stuff, and being able to do that was the main draw of that game for me, and that would elevate it into that position. I mean, like I say, I'm not as au fait with some of the other games as you are, but I'd say that it definitely holds a place in the top 5 Star Wars games. Yeah. So for me personally, so let's get on to the big kahuna with a big K, because that is KOTOR, which is Knights of the Old Republic. Mm-hmm. Can I start before you speak for a while, to upset some people? And I think people that know me well probably know my opinion on this anyway. So it got 39 out of 40. So it's almost the perfect Star Wars game across most lists. And people just regard it as the greatest ever Star Wars game. And it feels like it will never get knocked off that pedestal. We're talking about it 20 years later, and people still think it's the best game ever. I have a Green Mile syndrome. Now, the Green Mile syndrome is that one of my close friends, Pete, it is really angry with me over a long period of time, I'm talking probably 15 years now, that I have never watched The Green Mile. And I refuse to watch The Green Mile because it annoys him. And I love that. Now, he's probably mellowed on that a little bit. He probably doesn't care much anymore. But I care that I think that he might care. And there'll be people listening to this now like, watch the fucking Green Mile. Like, Dwayne, Paddy, sorry. But I'm not that bothered about it. Like, everyone's like, it's a really good film. It's really great. You should watch it. Don't make me do things. Do not make me play Knights of the Old Republic. I am not going to play Knights of the Old Republic. Exactly. I like RPGs, but I'm not that much of an RPG guy necessarily. It feels like when I watch video of it, and I've tried to play it like 3 or 4 times probably, and got into the first 15, 20 minutes and just went, I'm not that bothered. I just don't give a shit. It feels, I know it's set 4,000 years before Star Wars, the main canon, but it feels old. It feels like an old game, and it felt old at the time. Like, and I know it sounds silly, and this is me being very prejudiced. It felt like a PC game. It felt like an Xbox game when Xboxes were like, we are PCs in a games console. Yeah. And I was like, I didn't really want that in my life at the time, and I'm not that bothered necessarily now either. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I had a PC game, and one of my games on my list is a PC game. In fact, two of them are. And yeah, so don't get me wrong, I'm not like, like trying to say they're not right, but it just, I don't know, like it felt boxy. It feels like a boxy game, and I'm just not interested in playing it. And I'm wrong because everybody else in the entire world says that it is the best Star Wars game, but I'm just going to accept that I'm wrong, and that won't change. It just is what it is. So it's not a massive problem. It's just I'll live with that. So you tell me why those reviews might have said it's the best game ever, and what you've thought of it as well.
Sure. So it's made by the same people who made Mass Effect, as far as I am aware. Big, deep RPG. It wears its kind of RPG mechanics on its sleeve, so it will overtly refer to, dice rolls and numbers and all that nerdy stuff.
Well,
yeah, I know, right? But I think the reason why it's so highly regarded is that the story itself, as I understand it, is highly regarded, told well. But also, like, it's
Popping a beer.
But for the kind of Star Wars, like the adventure side of Star Wars, I think this is the one that taps most into that for a lot of people.
Okay.
So it kind of puts you in the center of the story, and you have some agency there. You can choose your way through dialogue trees and things like that, which in Star Wars games prior to that you probably wouldn't have had much opportunity to. I think you're absolutely right that it is boxy, it is clunky. And the reason that I say about how the story is quite highly regarded as if I haven't finished it was because I went into this weekend going, oh yeah, no, I've played it. And then I started playing it. It was like, no, I've played the sequel. I've not played this one.
Which is interestingly not as well reviewed. It's quite well reviewed, and it appears in some of the lists, but not enough to score high enough to be in the top 5.
Yeah, and yet most of the memories I've got of playing Knights of the Old Republic are in fact Knights of the Old Republic 2. And I think maybe I've only got a few hours on the original one. And I think you're right. I think it's not aged particularly well, to the extent that actually when we were getting onto our personal lists, I was going to give Mass Effect an honourable mention as a great Star Wars game, even though it's not Star Wars. But I think, like, for me personally, and the kinds of characters that I'm inclined to play, I think Mass Effect scratches the itch as well, if not better, than Knights of the Old Republic would. I don't necessarily want my characters running around with lightsabers and stuff like that. And if that's the case, then Mass Effect will more than fit the bill, and not feel kind of clunky doing it.
Yeah.
But that's me.
I'm probably a bit more inclined to. So again, embarrassingly, I actually own all the Mass Effect games. I've just never played them, but I'm just a bad RPG starter. I'm like one of those horses that backs out to start the race. I'm looking at him thinking, I want to be involved, but I probably just want to watch everyone else do it. Can I just go back to the point where you said and maybe this is what it is. He said it gives you some agency to be at the centre of the story, and maybe the reason I pull back on some things on Star Wars is that I'm not bothered about being at the centre of a story. I like to watch something unfold in front of me. And maybe that's why I'm so against the idea of being the protagonist.
And why you like the Skywalker sort of straight to the point, giving you a through thread.
Yeah, exactly. Which is really weird. We're all having those revelations about ourselves, and here's another one coming along. So, so at this point, I guess that, you talked about the greatest Star Wars game ever, according to most people. And you revealed that actually you've only played the second one, or you feel like you've played most of the second one. Something just for the listeners, if you own a Switch, for example, at the moment, for the next couple of days even, you can get a Star Wars Heritage Pack for £34 in the UK. You get Star Wars Republic Commando, Star Wars Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy, the Jedi Outcast that we've spoke about just then, so Star Wars Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, Star Wars Force Unleashed, which I didn't realise at the time, like as in when Fallen Order came out, that wasn't a Force Unleashed game. I thought it was like a third or fourth one of that when it first came out, and I was like, oh right, okay, because that was another little, I guess, moment in the sun where that feels like there's so many games where you're a Jedi and you're dark or light or a grey, and I'm like, there's a lot of it. I feel like, I just feel like there's a lot there.
But it's saturation, isn't it?
Yeah. And then there's KOTOR, so Knights of the Old Republic, and KOTOR 2. And then there's also Star Wars Racer. I will also say that Star Wars Racer, at the moment, it's not remastered, but it's a bit of a polished up version. That's free on Games with Gold at the moment on Xbox. So I opened that up a little bit this weekend and had like one race with Oscar, and that was great. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to be honest, I've not played the whole game. I've never played the game initially, and I'm probably going to go back and have just a little check out when I've got a little bit more time. But you can also pick those games up a little bit separately at the moment in Switch sale. So I think KOTOR is available for £7, and I looked at it. I went, that looks a really good value for the best ever Star Wars game. Fuck off. Say that. So that's what happened. And I ended up, after, as I said last week, I just bought Ollie Ollie World. So, that was, which is really fun.
Yeah, there you go.
Brilliant. So let's have a little talk about our own personal
Our own
lists.
ones,
So
right.
I think I've got the assignment wrong here. Only a little bit. So I kind of went for a list of things that maybe a bit off the beaten track that I've played,
Yeah.
which is really weird. That I've not really played that many, I guess what you call the best selling or the best reviewed or the mainline, generally considered best Star Wars games. But I have played these.
Yeah.
And so
Totally valid.
so let's do one each at a time.
Are we doing honourable mentions as well?
I guess so, yeah. So,
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, I'll probably mention an honourable mention there that, I like I say, I only played it for the first time this weekend, but Star Wars Racer seemed to be a very good game, very well reviewed, very well loved, and I can already tell from playing 10 minutes of it the weekend that actually it seems like a very fun game. I don't know how in-depth it is, but I think that was kind of there or thereabouts, getting towards being up there on the list and, pushing that top 5 or 6 in terms of, fun Star Wars games from the early 2000s. So yeah, that's an honourable mention that I've got there.
Yeah, that was on my list as well, actually. I did play it back in the day.
I need to stop talking. Just listen to you.
like,
I'm like, this game I've played for 3 minutes. Listen to my review.
No, I really enjoyed it back in the day. And it definitely sort of scratched that kind of F-Zero itch for me, which kind of got revived when we were reviewing Wipeout and stuff like that. And I, funnily enough, in the Switch sale, saw it was £5, £6, £7, I can't remember, but took a punt and was like, oh, actually, yeah, like they've polished it up really nicely. Like, so yeah, like would happily recommend that. Star Wars Bounty Hunter.
Okay.
Is another one on my honourable mentions.
Passed it on the Wikipedia page.
Yeah, so you play as Jango Fett. Can we spot a episode 2 theme? But you are basically going through these levels. You've got these objectives to complete, but you can try and capture bounties on the way. But the main reason it gets an honourable mention was, in fact, 2 reasons. I rented it with my friend Andrew when we were having a sleepover one time and basically played through all of it in like one sitting.
Nice.
I don't think we quite finished it, but we got pretty frigging close.
It's a classic.
Well, it's the only game I can think of where we actually managed to get quite close to the end in one sitting. So, like, it's got a special place for me. But also, it was one of the first games where, like, the animation of the main character, like, grabbed me. And, like, he can shoot in 2 different directions at once, which in 2023 is, like, well, duh. But at the time, on the PS2, was, like, mind-blowing.
An underrated Star Wars fight. Obi-Wan versus Jango Fett. Really, that isn't it's a really good fight. That is in the movies. So I can imagine, as a character in a game, would be really interesting.
Yeah, and again, like they use the game to flesh out the character a bit. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier on about how like episode 2 itself, yeah, sure, not great, but as a sort of platform to build like interesting other work on, yeah, like totally works. The other honourable mentions we've kind of already gone through, like the Lego ones and Battlefront and Mass Effect. But the other one that I did want to mention was the Clone Wars game itself, right?
Okay.
Which was made by the same people who did Battlefront. Bit more sort of vehicle combat heavy and a bit more like objective based as a sort of single player experience. But the main reason was that, sure, I might not have played much couch co-op on Battlefront 2 itself, but the Clone Wars game had like a little sort of top-down Geonosis arena sort of horde mode wave battle thing that you could play co-op, which we rinsed the absolute shit out of as like, 2, 3, 4 Jedi against like waves of droids and stuff like that. Really good fun back in the day, but did not make my best ever list.
Empire at War. I've never played it, but when I came
I've not
across
played
the
that.
list, it was floating around sort of like maybe 10th on most lists and things, where it's like, it looked like it was a bit of a, it was like 2006, so it was like a little bit later than Command and Conquer, but it seemed
was a strategy
to be,
one, wasn't it?
it looked like a really quite cool strategy game. That kind of got some pop and stuff, so that'd be, I'd be interested to pick that up, to be honest. Yeah, so that's something I'd be interested to have a look at. I didn't have any more than that. I don't think that that there are. I'm shocked at how many Star Wars games there are. Like,
There's a metric fuck ton.
I measure my pigeon poo in that. That lands on my fucking path at home. So let's go into a little bit of our list of games, because this is hopefully, I feel like this is where we will really kick on, because we've talked about games that everyone's really into and enjoyed before. I'd love people to go and try and track. I mean, I don't think you can even with these games, but try and track down maybe a port or a video of them or something, and check them out because this is what I loved, like when I've played them and stuff. So I'll go first then with one. I'll go with the more recent one and work my way back. Vader Immortal VR on the Oculus Quest.
Okay, yeah.
That's right. I'm coming out. It's not even a fucking console. It's a thing strapped to your head. Brilliant. So I went with a list of things that I've played. Mm-hmm. Did I enjoy that game? Nah. The third episode, so it breaks it into 3 episodes. You've got to pay for each episode. I assume they've probably bundled it together by now. Please, Jesus. But the third episode, you get a Jedi training or a lightsaber training, a VR training with your lightsaber arena, and you build up levels. In fact, I think there's one on every episode, but the third one seems to be the best one from what I remember.
Right.
And so you just get attacked by random stormtroopers, or you get attacked by random robots and things, and you're in your front room wielding a lightsaber on VR. Awesome! Why? I don't know why they thought they had to build a really milquetoast storyline where you have Vader again as a antagonist. Was he protagonist in that? Anyway, but he's heavily involved in the story, and the story's boring and it's a bit weird, if I'm going to be honest, and it's very short, and you pay quite a bit of money for it, and not necessarily my bag. But the training part of it, playing that on your Quest, untethered in your front room, fantastic, nice. Wonderful. You can spend hours doing that. And you get 15 levels in each of the training levels. There definitely is more than one training level now, I remember it. And there's up to 15 levels. And I probably got to level 7 or 8 and it got hard. And I probably, if I'd trained a bit more, could have got a couple more levels out of it. But certainly, it went well in terms of difficulty level. And I'd be really intrigued to see what people are like, top level of that, how good they are at being a Jedi.
Yeah.
Or a Sith. So yeah, that was mine. Vader
Nice.
Immortal. If you've got a Quest, or you've played a Quest, or you know a friend with a Quest, and they've got that game, have a go at it. 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and you'll have a blast.
Nice. So my opening gambit. I know we've talked a little bit about Jedi Outcast. I'm going to do Jedi Academy.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like a bit of an expansion pack to Jedi Outcast. So to the extent that until we covered Jedi Outcast earlier, I was going to bundle them together into one entry and just outright cheat. But Academy,
you're a better man than that.
Only just. Academy basically fleshes out the lightsaber combat a little bit more. The single player story stuff is a bit weaker. Still involves Kyle Katarn. The man was done dirty by the franchise. I will tell everybody that forever. But the multiplayer was where it really clicked, and it came along at a time. Again, me and my friend Andrew, who most of the sort of Star Warsy bits of my life end up relating to somewhere along the line.
Padandruwan. It's there.
It's a stretch, but I appreciate the effort. But yeah, we would sit there, he'd be on his desktop, I'd be on my laptop, we'd hook him up on a little local area network and just muck about with lightsabers on this. And the Switch port, unlike the Switch port of Jedi Outcast 2, does have a multiplayer component, and you can do bot matches and stuff like that. And I realised when I was tinkering with it at the weekend, actually, I like these things because I don't feel like I'm missing out on a core part of the game because I can still do some multiplayer.
Yeah.
Sure, the AI might be thick as shit, but it's still there. However, if you play it on PC, you can download mods and enhance the lightsaber combat even more. So Movie Battles 2 is this multiplayer total conversion thing that builds on that rock solid foundation of that lightsaber combat in Jedi Academy and makes it even better again. The Jedi Academy for me.
Cool. So something that I should have mentioned in the honourable mentions, but I'm going to go ahead and mention it now, is TIE Fighter. So that was Star Wars TIE Fighter. I think it was released in 1994. I never owned that game, but I saw it was really well reviewed in a lot of the games lists. And that was a PC-based game where you, lo and behold, flew a TIE Fighter, and it was the sequel to X-Wing. I actually had the third game in the series, which was X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, and the only real difference that I can see, and I don't know why this game isn't therefore included in more lists, really, it was because it was better graphics, and I think there's a little bit more to it in terms of the game as well. It was that you use a joystick to control your spacecraft, which, oh my days, like, as in, playing with your joystick in the late 90s on your PC was so exciting. I mean, I used it for FIFA 98 to bend Beckham's free kicks. You know, that was great. But using it for X-Wing versus TIE Fighter to actually fly a space fighter through the sky with your joystick and to actually fire your laser out at the end of that, bloody
Huge.
brilliant. Yeah, so good. Like, as in, you know, that you like to live an actual space battle Star Wars experience on your PC. You know, so at the age of, I think it was out in 1997. So for me, the age of 9, I played, like you've said, we've coined the phrase quite a lot recently. Played the shit out of that game. Like, it was fantastic. I don't think I got very far in it. Like, I used to just mess around on random objectives, and it was like, and it give you, oh, you have to go and destroy this, or, you know, fly here. But then you could have just turned around and be like, well, I'm just going to take this satellite out, and everyone else in the entire game, like, as in, you know, whether it's on multiplayer or whether it's at the single player game, the whole space battle's over there going on. But what I'm doing is just keep flying back around and beating the shit out of this satellite, and it's like, just because I can, and it'd take me like 3 hours to blow this thing up because you're not meant to be able to do it. It's not part of the game. But you're like, that was like what you're doing. You're like, this is really important to me.
Oh, I'm definitely finding, with this whole odyssey of ours and going back to these things, I'm definitely finding how little of games I actually played back in the day.
I just played bits of games.
Yeah.
It's really funny because you played them for hours, but you just played a
You've only done
specific
this
thing.
one. You've done the opening level.
And the noises when you'd get hit by a laser were your R2 unit that sat in the back of your
nice.
X-wing, you know, and you knew you were under pressure when there was a TIE fighter behind you, and you hear R2 just getting hit, and you go wow, and you know, there isn't like, and someone else is telling you, but you know, you've got one on your tail. It was just authentic sounds. Looked great, looked really good for the time, like, as in, you know, and it wasn't, you could see the move on from the almost the late 80s gaming where you have the wired sort of like Star Destroyer sort of things, and the Star Wars games of that time where it's just, you know, when I went to Arcade Club, I put it on, I was like, it literally is just dots and lines that you're firing your lasers at to actual spacecraft. Brilliant. What a wonderful game. And I'm surprised that's not on any of the lists that I came across. TIE Fighter was, and I wonder if it's a bit of one of those things where it's like, we consider that to be the game from that franchise, whereas actually, from like I say, from what I can understand, is that there's more features to the third one, and you can play it on a joystick. So, for me, why would that not be on there? But it isn't. So, you know,
That's fair.
I'll just sit on that island. That's cool.
That's the hill I'm willing to die on.
Yeah, exactly.
Shall I go? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's sort of similar lines, actually. In fact, I'm going to give a quick honourable mention off the back of that to Star Wars Squadrons.
Oh yeah. So again, on Game Pass, and I really should just go and play it. I even watched the trailer for it this weekend, and I thought that everyone says that game is, but you know, that is just basically that is the ancestor of that game. Basically.
Yeah, and like I've got like a little flight stick for my PS4 from a while back, and I took the plunge at the weekend and picked up a copy and was like, you know what, I don't regret this decision. However, the spot on my list is going to Rogue Squadron 2.
Okay.
Back on the dear old GameCube.
Again, that was kind of mentioned in a few lists lower down, and a couple. It wasn't like, you know, super high or anything, but
it's got a definite like place in my heart. Not necessarily for any particular reason besides the first fight you have with the Star Destroyer.
Okay.
And it's relatively rare that I can point to specific moments in gaming and gone like, actually, like, that was a proper sort of jaw-dropping moment of like, whoa, this is what the medium can do.
Yeah.
But in like 2002, 2003, going up to that Star Destroyer and the sheer scale of it, and then having all of the lasers firing at you, and then being able to like pick it apart and blow it up was one of those moments of just like, holy shit, like, I am making this happen. Like, I had a quick look at a video on YouTube before we started recording this. It was like, you know what? that still looks fucking cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it's a very, it is one of a few vivid gaming memories of just my socks being knocked off. So yeah, I got to give it the shout.
It feels like, as we talk about it as well, there's a massive variance in how good a space-based Star Wars game can be. Like, I'm hearing, when I talked about Battlefront 2 on the PSP, for example, shit. Like, it's fine, like, actually, but I don't want to go back to that, but that is in, like, the repetitive nature is a bit shit and stuff. Like, it just felt like they just so half-baked. Whereas, you talk about Rogue Squadron 2 or X-Wing versus TIE Fighter and things, like, where you go, that game is so complete and it feels great, and you have those wow moments where you're like, I feel like I'm in a space battle and I am turning the tide of this war here and now.
Yeah,
like,
you feel like you matter.
Yeah, and that's, it's like, it's crazy that there's such highs and such lows in the same game franchise. Like, you'd think I know there's different developers and they'll get farmed out to different people, but you'd think that they would all learn from each other.
You would have thought so. I think the main reason for a lot of this list is, or certainly my list, is like specific moments, or like very little of it is geared towards the game as a whole. And the reason I say that is because I think if I went back to play Rogue Squadron 2, I do wonder if I would find it a tad simplistic a lot of the time, or there'd be missions that bored the tits off me, or something like that.
Yeah.
But for those dizzying highs that it does have, like, I think it earns a place on the list. However, you fast forward to nowadays, and like Star Wars Squadron's sitting there with my little joystick and like.
Did you say you played it or not? You had played it this weekend?
Yeah. But like, just quote unquote simple stuff like, while you're flying, you can like divert power to your shields, and stupid sci-fi shit like that, but just makes you feel more immersed and makes you feel more in control.
That's what I'd heard about Squadrons and I'm going to go away and play it now, because it sounds like much more of your squadron, like, is in, you have one of you have to be doing this with your ship, and like you say, diverting to your shields and protecting your friends and protecting yourself in certain ways and stuff. It's not just about how many lasers are going to fire towards this thing.
It's a bit more involved.
Yeah, which sounds great, and and it was weird because I remember it being mildly welcomed as a game, but actually it seems to be now people seem to be a bit more into it. So I'm like, all right, okay, well, I'm definitely going to try it out, especially obviously through Game Pass, nearly for free. So,
well, I'll tell you what, it's an EA Star Wars game that isn't chock full of microtransactions as well. So like,
can't go wrong.
I think it's developed a bit of a cult following.
Yeah, that's cool. So my last one is my most left field, but also it's a fantastic game. So, Star Wars Droid Works.
I have honestly never heard of it.
PC game, 99. You are a player and you are hanging out with the Jawas in a sandcrawler, and C-3PO and R2-D2, they're your chums, and it's an educational game. Game, EA Arts, whatever it was called at the time, and you are tasked with building droids to complete tasks. Tasks such as, and it's very basic tasks, such as like lift this wall, like is in, so therefore you have to pull on a pulley. So, or use the magnetism on your robot that you've just built to get across this bridge. That isn't really basic stuff, but trushed up in a Star Wars world. And you build a robot, you build a droid, you get given, once you pass levels, you can pick up different things, like you can add a torch to your droid, or you can add a flamethrower to your droid or whatever. And then the levels build into, sometimes there's like imperial enemies, the enemies of the against your droid, but like it's almost like you're just working your way through little mazes in a level, and it's so good. And like you've got to beat the level before you run out of power, but so therefore you can't go too fast with your droid. You're using too much of your battery power. But have you put a good battery into your droid? What a game! So good. Like, it's ridiculous. That is in it, and the Jawas are really interactive. It's probably the game that I've played the most. The Jawas are so important. They talk to you. It's great. The person that narrates the level as you're doing things sounds like a sort of a robot Dolly Parton. Like it's really like It's really fun. Just look up a video of it. You don't have to ever play it, but certainly look it up and just kind of see maybe a little playthrough of
Just take a moment to appreciate it.
And it's such a weird game, and I don't know anybody else anywhere in the entire universe that's played that. And I had it, told all my friends about it. No one was bothered, but I was, and I had a great time. And so Star Wars PC game in the late 90s for me. I had a couple of games, and it was great. And that was probably on the back of me seeing the 20th anniversary movies. Then so late 90s was peak Star Wars for me. Going to see Phantom Menace and being heavily disappointed was great for me. So. Yeah, I guess that kind of brings us to the end of the podcast.
Well, I've still got my last one.
Oh, what? Oh,
hold your horses,
I thought
my
you had
friend.
3 already. You got 4.
No, I haven't got 4. I've only done 2.
You've got a lot of Star Wars going on here. Okay,
no,
that's fine.
I've got to do
Sorry.
my last one, especially
Okay.
as you teed up late 90s PC gaming so well. Because my parents have been listening to this, and the one thing that they both mentioned was when are you going to talk about Dark Forces 2? And that is now. So congratulations, Mum and Dad, you're getting your wish. So this one, it's not going on for the gameplay or anything like that. Basically, you are playing Kyle Katarn, you go round shooting people and all that kind of stuff and flipping buttons. The main reason this is going on the list is because it was the first time I ever dabbled with online gaming. So again, this is largely down to my friend Andrew back in the day being involved, but we were trying to work out how to play this thing online over a 56k dial-up modem, and we were having to use the MSN Gaming Zone website to hunt down servers and try and work out what the hell was going on with all this, and the hours I spent trying to get into a game.
Well spent.
And I'd finally get into a game only for the lag to just be so impossible to work with that I would be killed before I spawned and all this kind of stuff. And I never got anywhere with it. And yet I kept going, trying to play this game. And I genuinely think of all the various Star Wars games, this is the one that has had the most impact on me as a person for character building, because it presented me with a problem and I kept hammering away at it. And that is a trait that I've retained.
I love that you've touched on this point. I love it so much. It's great.
It's nothing to do with the game. I went back and I picked it up on Steam over the weekend, right, in the May the 4th sale. And I genuinely don't think I ever finished the first level on it back in the day.
It's wild, isn't it? That isn't.
And yet,
the challenge of loading up a game is something we should touch on at some point. That isn't. Yeah. With LAN or lag or ping, that isn't. There's definitely got to be a lot of examples in our lives that we've had those kind of things happen to us, and you stick with it, and you go at it like a challenge.
Absolutely, and it's stayed with me, that whole experience of just trying to get it to work. And then you go around, like I was saying earlier, the sort of the Jedi Outcast era where we were on a little local area network and stuff like that. We started doing that a little bit because it was about the only game that I could run on my laptop at the time and stuff like that. And so as a sort of gateway to the sort of early days of online gaming, it definitely holds a special place for me. Yeah. Wow. Now you can wrap up the pod.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
I mean, I totally can't count. So before we do wrap up the pod, then, so I want to go back to that. Is that what is your favourite Star Wars game that you've played then?
It is Dark Forces 2.
Right.
Genuinely, without a hint of irony, right. It is Dark Forces 2 because it has such a significant place in my own personal development as a person. I can't overestimate the amount of time and effort that I put into trying to get this fucking game running. Gameplay be damned. Dark Forces 2 for the meta problem. Absolutely my favourite.
Oh, fair enough.
What about yours?
Star Wars Pinball? No. X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. Yeah, that was the game that I spent the most time with.
A legitimately good choice.
Yeah, so I'm not upset about that. Cool. So, we hope you've really enjoyed the pod this week. We're aware it's a very bumper edition, but Star Wars. As I said to Rich, you can't beat them, blast them. You know, we just wait, no, well, can't blast them. No, that's gone wrong. Oh no, can't blast them, join them. There we go.
There we go. Right.
Yeah, I can definitely work for the Empire. There's a lot to talk about in the Star Wars universe, and gaming is just one facet of that, but we've really enjoyed that, so hopefully you have too. So thank you for listening, guys, and we'll see you again soon.
Cheers.
Wait.